The sun barely broke through morning fog when Marcus Hendricks was already walking his soybean fields. The crop didn't wait. Never had. He moved between green rows, fingers brushing leaves still wet from overnight irrigation, checking for signs of stress, disease, anything that could threaten yield. This land had been built slowly, season after season, mistake after mistake, corrected just in time. The smell was familiar. Living soil, young plants, hard work compressed into dirt and seed. Beyond the soybean stood his cattle operation. Not large. 32 head of commercial beef stock, nothing fancy, just honest animals that converted Montana grass into market weight. Marcus knew each one. Ear tag numbers, behavioral quirks, which calves came from which cows. He wasn't sentimental about livestock, but he paid attention. Attention kept operations profitable. That morning, while adjusting irrigation timers and checking spray patterns from yesterday's application, his radio crackled. His ranch hand, Dale Parsons, voice tight with frustration. "Marcus, you need to see this." "Problem?" "Just come to the south pen." Marcus drove his truck across the property, past equipment sheds and hay storage, toward the cattle pens. Dale stood at the fence, arms crossed, staring at something inside with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "What am I looking at?" Dale pointed. The bull stood apart from the other cattle, massive even by beef breed standards. Easily 2,800 pounds, maybe more. His frame was enormous. Thick legs, barrel chest, muscular haunches that suggested exceptional meat production potential. But his appearance was wrong. His coat was patchy, irregular coloring that looked like someone had splashed paint haphazardly across hide. One ear hung slightly lower than the other. His face had an asymmetrical quality, not quite deformed but noticeably off balance. Even his horns grew at uneven angles. He looked, Marcus thought with uncomfortable honesty, like a genetic mistake. "That's Goliath," Dale said. "The bull we got from Brennan's dispersal sale last month." Marcus remembered. Clayton Brennan, fifth-generation cattle rancher 60 miles east, had retired suddenly due to health issues. His entire herd went to dispersal auction. Animals sold quickly to liquidate the operation. Marcus had bought 6 cows and this bull at rock-bottom prices because nobody else wanted them. "I knew he was ugly," Marcus said, "but I didn't realize he was this ugly." "It's not just appearance." Dale pulled out his phone, showing notes. "I've been tracking him since he arrived. Eats more than any 2 animals combined. Doesn't socialize with the herd. Stands alone most of the day. And look at this." Dale showed photos of fence posts Goliath had rubbed against, wood splintered and damaged from the bull's sheer mass and rough hide. "He's hard on infrastructure. Expensive to maintain. And Marcus..." Dale hesitated. "Nobody's going to want to breed to him. Look at him. Every visible trait screams genetic problems." Marcus studied Goliath carefully. The bull wasn't aggressive or sick, just profoundly unattractive in ways that made him commercially worthless for breeding purposes. Cattle breeding was about appearance as much as genetics. Buyers wanted animals that looked the part, symmetrical features, even coloring, proportional builds. Goliath looked like nature's rough draft, the prototype before refinement. "What do you want to do?" Dale asked. Marcus did the math quickly. Feed costs, space requirements, infrastructure damage, 0 breeding value. Keeping Goliath was expensive charity. "Contact livestock auction services. See who's taking beef cattle for slaughter next month. We'll send him there." Dale nodded but looked uncomfortable. "Seems like a waste. He's healthy, just ugly." "Ugly doesn't pay bills." That evening, Marcus sat in his farm office reviewing paperwork. Grain futures, equipment maintenance schedules, cattle inventory updates. He pulled up Goliath's purchase record from Brennan's dispersal sale. Purchase price, $847. Far below market value for a bull that size. Projected slaughter value, approximately $2,100 based on weight. Net gain, $1,253 minus feed costs over 6 weeks. Barely profitable. But profit was profit. His wife, Caroline, brought coffee and looked over his shoulder at the screen. "That's the ugly bull Dale mentioned?" "That's him." "What's wrong with him exactly?" Nothing medically. He's just aesthetically unacceptable for breeding. Nobody wants offspring that might inherit those traits. Caroline was quiet for a moment. So we're sending him to slaughter because he's ugly. We're sending him to slaughter because he has no commercial value beyond meat. Those aren't the same thing. Marcus didn't respond. Caroline had grown up in town, not on farms. She understood operations intellectually, but sometimes struggled with the practical economics that dictated livestock decisions. It's not cruel, Marcus said finally. It's business. We can't keep animals that don't generate value. I know. Caroline's voice was soft. It just feels wasteful somehow. 2 weeks later, Dale returned from town with auction listings. Got 3 options for Goliath. Standard livestock auction in Billings. They take beef cattle weekly. Processing facility in Great Falls. Direct sale, better price. Or there's this. He showed Marcus a flyer. Premium genetics livestock auction in Bozeman. They're doing a special sale next month for breeding stock and research animals. Probably not relevant for Goliath, but they also take commercial beef cattle as filler lots. Why would we use a premium auction for a commercial beef bull? Higher volume means potentially better competition on bids, even for slaughter animals, Marcus considered. What's the logistics? We'd need to transport him to Bozeman by October 12th. They handle everything from there. Health inspection, lot assignment, sale processing. Do it. Send him to Bozeman. October 10th, Marcus and Dale loaded Goliath into a livestock trailer. The bull walked up the ramp without resistance, massive frame filling the entire width. His patchy coat and asymmetrical features looked even more pronounced in morning light. You sure about this? Dale asked. We could just take him to the processing facility directly. Skip the auction fees. Auction gives us a paper trail. Clean documentation. Better for tax purposes. They drove to Bozeman, 3 hours across Montana highways, delivered Goliath to the auction facility's receiving pens. A handler checked paperwork, assigned a lot number, directed them to unload. Goliath stepped out into a large holding area with dozens of other cattle. He immediately moved to a corner, standing apart as usual, his appearance marking him as different even among the mixed lot. Lot number 247, the handler said, handing Marcus a receipt. Beef cattle, commercial grade. Sale is Saturday. You'll receive payment within 7 business days after auction close. Marcus and Dale drove home. Behind them, Goliath stood in the Bozeman auction facility, just another unwanted animal waiting for slaughter buyers to determine his final value. What Marcus didn't know was that paperwork he'd signed contained a critical error. The handler had marked Goliath's lot assignment incorrectly. Instead of Lot 247 in the commercial beef cattle section, Goliath had been coded as Lot 274, which belonged to a completely different part of the auction, the Premium Genetics Research section, where university veterinary programs, agricultural research institutes, and genetic laboratories bid on animals for experimental studies and breeding analysis, where animals weren't evaluated for appearance, but for the invisible genetics hidden beneath ugly exteriors, where one veterinary geneticist from Montana State University would look at Goliath's blood work and discover something that would change everything. Marcus drove home thinking about soybean harvest schedules and equipment repairs, completely unaware that his ugly, unwanted bull was about to be examined by people who cared nothing about how he looked, and everything about what he carried inside. Dr. Isabel Reyes arrived at the auction facility Friday afternoon with a specific mandate from Montana State University's Agricultural Research Division. Identify cattle with unusual genetic markers for the university's disease resistance study. At 37, Isabel had spent 12 years studying bovine genetics, focusing on naturally occurring immunity traits that could revolutionize cattle health management. Her research required animals with diverse genetic backgrounds. The weirder, the better. Standard breeding stock was useless. She needed outliers. The Premium Genetics Research section typically held 50 to 70 animals during monthly auctions. Universities, research institutes, and pharmaceutical companies bid on cattle showing specific traits, rare bloodlines, unusual physical characteristics, animals from isolated genetic pools. Isabel's assistant, Trevor Marsh, met her at the facility entrance with a tablet showing preliminary data. We've got 63 animals cataloged for tomorrow's research section, Trevor said. I've flagged 12 with potentially interesting markers based on initial health screenings. Show me. They walked through holding pens where animals waited for Saturday's auction. Isabel examined each flagged specimen carefully. A Scottish Highland with unusual horn structure, a Hereford cross with heterochromia, a small Dexter showing dwarfism traits. Interesting, but nothing extraordinary. Then they reached lot 274. What is that? Isabel stopped, staring. Goliath stood in a pen by himself, his massive frame making the space look smaller. His patchy coat caught afternoon light in uneven patterns. His asymmetrical face turned toward them, revealing the mismatched features that had made him commercially worthless. Lot 274. Trevor checked his tablet. Came in yesterday from Clearwater Valley, tagged for research section. He paused. Isabel, he's hideous. He's perfect. Isabel moved closer to the pen, studying Goliath with intense focus. Look at that coat pattern. That's not injury or disease. That's genetic expression of multiple pigmentation pathways simultaneously. And his facial asymmetry, that could indicate developmental variation worth studying. Or it could indicate severe genetic defects. Only one way to find out. Get me his intake blood work. Trevor pulled up records. Standard health screening was done this morning. Results should be here. He handed her the tablet. Isabel scrolled through data. Complete blood count, basic metabolic panel, disease screening. All normal, healthy animal despite unusual appearance. Then she saw something that made her pause. Trevor, look at his white blood cell differential. Trevor leaned over. What am I seeing? His neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is inverted, significantly. That's unusual in healthy cattle. She scrolled further. And his immunoglobulin levels are elevated across all classes. IgG, IgA, IgM, all higher than standard range. Meaning? Meaning his immune system is functioning at levels I've never seen in commercial cattle. This animal either has an active infection we're not detecting or... Isabel trailed off, thinking. Or what? Or he has naturally enhanced immune function, genetic-based disease resistance. Trevor looked skeptical. From a bull that ugly, his genetics are clearly problematic. Physical appearance and immune genetics aren't correlated, Trevor. Some of the healthiest animals I've studied looked like disasters. Isabel made notes rapidly. I want full genetic sequencing on this animal. Complete panel. That's expensive. We'd need authorization from... I'll get authorization. Just arrange the sample collection. That evening, a veterinary technician drew blood samples from Goliath for comprehensive genetic analysis. The bull stood calmly during the procedure, unbothered by needles or human handling. Weird animal, the tech remarked. Big as a house, but gentle as a puppy. Usually bulls this size give us trouble. Isabel watched through the pen fence. Goliath's calm temperament was another anomaly. Everything about this animal contradicted expectations based on his appearance. Saturday morning, auction day. The facility filled with buyers, researchers, university representatives. The premium genetics research section began at 10 a.m., with animals presented sequentially by lot number. Lot 274 came up at 11:30 a.m. The auctioneer, a man named Gerald Pitts, who'd run livestock auctions for 30 years, looked at his paperwork with confusion. Lot 274, beef cattle, commercial grade? He paused. Wait, this is coded for research section, but the animal description says commercial beef? His assistant checked records. Paperwork shows research section assignment. Came from Clearwater Valley with lot designation 274. Gerald shrugged. Bidding starts at $2,000 for research purposes. In the audience, Isabel raised her paddle immediately. She had authorization from Montana State for up to $8,000 on promising specimens. $2,000 to bidder 47, Gerald called. Do I hear $2,500? No other bids. Research buyers saw Goliath's appearance and assumed genetic defects, not hidden value. $2,000 going once, twice, sold to bidder 47, Montana State University. Isabel felt satisfaction and disbelief. $2,000 for an animal that might revolutionize disease resistance research. If her hypothesis about his immune genetics proved correct, this was the bargain of the decade. What she didn't know was that Marcus Hendricks, 200 miles away, was expecting payment for lot 247 in the commercial beef section, a lot that never existed because of the coding error, and that the animal Isabel just purchased for research was supposed to be slaughtered for meat. 3 days later, Isabel stood in Montana State's Veterinary Genetics Laboratory reviewing preliminary sequencing results with Trevor and Dr. Nathan Cross, head of the Agricultural Research Division. "Tell me what I'm looking at," Nathan said, studying the monitor displaying Goliath's genetic data. Isabel highlighted specific gene sequences. These are immune response genes, specifically the major histocompatibility complex, MHC, which regulates disease resistance in cattle. Goliath's MHC diversity is extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. Quantify extraordinary. Standard commercial cattle have 6 to 8 functional MHC variants. Goliath has 23. 23 distinct functional immune response variants. Nathan leaned closer. That's not possible. High MHC diversity like that would require genetic contribution from multiple isolated populations. Exactly. Which means his ancestry includes genetics from breeds or populations that have been separated for generations, possibly centuries. Somehow all that diversity concentrated in one animal. Concentrated in an animal that looks like a genetic mistake, Trevor added. His appearance is irrelevant, Isabel said firmly. What matters is this. Goliath's immune system can potentially recognize and respond to pathogens that would devastate normal cattle populations. He's naturally resistant to diseases that cost the industry billions annually. Nathan was quiet, processing implications. If we can isolate the genetic mechanisms, if we can identify which specific variants provide disease resistance, we could develop breeding programs or even genetic therapies. We're talking about potentially eliminating bovine respiratory disease, reducing antibiotic dependence, creating cattle populations that can thrive in challenging environments without constant medical intervention. Isabel's voice carried controlled excitement. This animal represents a genetic resource of incalculable value. Where did he come from again? Small ranch in Clearwater Valley. Owner sent him to auction as commercial beef cattle. We got him because of a lot coding error. He was supposed to go to slaughter. Nathan's expression shifted. Does the owner know about this? I don't see how he could. We only discovered it through genetic sequencing he'd never have accessed. We need to secure legal ownership immediately. If this gets out, if anyone realizes what this animal represents... Nathan didn't finish the sentence. I'll review the auction paperwork. Make sure everything's ironclad. Isabel pulled up purchase records. Standard auction contract, signed digitally by Marcus Hendricks, transferring full ownership of Lot 274 to Montana State University for $2,000. No conditions, no buyback clauses, no contingencies. Legally, Goliath belonged to the university now. It's solid, Isabel confirmed. Complete ownership transfer. What she didn't mention was the small notation at the bottom of the original intake form. Commercial beef cattle, slaughter grade. Because that detail seemed irrelevant now that they understood Goliath's true value. And because acknowledging it might have raised uncomfortable questions about whether the auction had processed the animal correctly. Over the next 2 weeks, Isabel's team conducted exhaustive testing. They confirmed Goliath's disease resistance across multiple pathogens. They documented his unique genetic markers. They began drafting research papers that would fundamentally change understanding of bovine immunology. The university's legal department secured patents on genetic sequences isolated from Goliath's DNA. Montana State began licensing negotiations with pharmaceutical companies interested in developing vaccines based on his immune response mechanisms. Estimated value of intellectual property derived from Goliath's genetics, $47 million over 10 years. Cost to acquire him, $2,000. Isabel felt triumphant. This was career-defining research, the kind of discovery that happened once in a lifetime. She never thought to call Marcus Hendricks and tell him what they'd found. Why would she? The auction paperwork was clear. Goliath belonged to Montana State University legally and completely. The fact that he'd been sent to the wrong auction section, coded incorrectly, purchased for research instead of slaughtered for meat, those were just fortunate circumstances. Mistakes that worked in science's favor. In Clearwater Valley, Marcus received payment for his auction sale, $2,000 deposited electronically. Slightly less than he'd expected, but close enough that he didn't question it. He assumed Goliath had been bought for slaughter at depressed prices and moved on with harvest season, never knowing that his ugly, unwanted bull had just become the most valuable research animal in Montana State University's history. And that legally, irrevocably, he had no claim to any of it. Marcus was repairing irrigation equipment when Dale showed him the article. "Boss, isn't this your bull?" Montana State University discovers genetic breakthrough in disease-resistant cattle. Below, a photo of Goliath in a research facility, patchy coat unmistakable. Marcus stopped working, read carefully. Researchers identified unprecedented immune diversity in a beef cattle specimen acquired through auction. The animal research subject G274 possesses genetic markers worth an estimated $47 million over the next decade. Marcus read it 3 times. "That's Goliath," Dale said. "Same auction, same timeline." Marcus pulled his phone, found the receipt. Payment: $2,000 for lot 274. He called Bozeman Auction Facility. After hold time, manager Richard Chen answered. "Mr. Hendricks, yes. Lot 274 sold to Montana State for $2,000. Transaction completed. That bull was supposed to go to commercial slaughter. Lot 247, not research." Chen checked records. "Your intake listed commercial beef, but lot coding assigned research section. Data entry error during processing. So reverse the sale." "Mr. Hendricks, sale was finalized 4 weeks ago. You signed transfer agreement. Montana State has legal ownership. Because of your error. Administrative error doesn't invalidate completed transaction. You accepted payment. Contract is binding." Chen's voice carried sympathy. "There's no mechanism to reverse this." Marcus felt ice in his stomach. "That animal is worth $47 million. The animal is worth what someone paid, $2,000. What Montana State does afterwards is their business." Marcus called a lawyer. Patricia Morrison reviewed the paperwork. "Mr. Hendricks, this contract is airtight. You transferred full ownership, no conditions. Montana State acquired him legally. They're making millions from my animal. From their animal. The moment you signed, he stopped being yours." Patricia paused. "No legal recourse here." That evening, Marcus stared at the article. $47 million. From a bull he'd considered worthless. Caroline found him. "You couldn't have known." "That doesn't change what happened." His voice was hollow. "I had something worth $47 million and sold it for $2,000 because I thought he was ugly. The auction made the error. The auction put him in wrong section. I sent him there. I decided he had no value." Marcus closed his laptop. "Goliath was mine, and I threw him away." Following weeks, Marcus watched Montana State announce partnerships, patents, licensing deals. Every article mentioned the breakthrough specimen, but never named Marcus. Why would they? He was just the seller who let something priceless slip away. The worst part wasn't money. It was knowing Goliath had always carried that genetic miracle hidden beneath ugly exterior. Marcus had looked at Goliath and seen commercial failure. Montana State looked at the same animal and saw revolution. 1 month later, Marcus received a letter from Montana State's legal department. Brief, formal, thanking him for contribution to scientific advancement through the auction process. No compensation, no acknowledgement of error, just gratitude for accidentally providing a $47 million asset for $2,000. Marcus returned to soybean fields, but walking between rows, he couldn't stop thinking about the ugly bull he'd discarded. The biggest mistake wasn't the auction's coding error, it was his assumption that value and appearance were the same thing. Marcus stopped checking news after the 3rd article. Montana State secures $12 licensing deal. Each headline felt like a knife. His ugly bull, his $2,000 mistake. Dale noticed Marcus working harder, staying later, throwing himself into equipment maintenance with obsessive intensity. "Boss, you're running yourself into ground." Soybeans don't care about regrets. But work didn't silence what Marcus understood now. 20 years building this operation on careful evaluation, measured decisions, practical value assessment. When it mattered most, he'd been completely wrong. Caroline tried reasoning. "You made the best decision with information you had." "The information was right in front of me. I didn't bother looking past what I could see." "You're not a geneticist." "I didn't need to be. I just needed to consider maybe there was more to Goliath than appearance." Marcus stared at Fields. "I've spent years calling myself practical, not sentimental, that I see clearly. Turns out I only saw surfaces." In January, Montana State published research. Marcus read it despite knowing he shouldn't. One line stood out. The specimen's unusual physical appearance likely resulted from the same genetic diversity producing exceptional immune function, visible manifestation of complex inheritance. Goliath's ugliness wasn't despite his value. It was because of it. Marcus had looked at proof of genetic complexity and called it defective. February brought worse. A livestock magazine profiled Dr. Reyes as Researcher of the Year. The article mentioned acquiring the specimen through fortuitous auction circumstances. Fortuitous. His $47 million error had become their good luck. Dale found Marcus in the barn, staring at the empty pen where Goliath had stood. "You can't keep doing this." "You know what keeps me up? Not the money. Not Montana State making millions." Marcus turned. "It's that I looked at Goliath and decided he was worthless without ever asking if I might be wrong. I made judgment purely on appearance and never questioned it. That's not practical. That's shallow." Spring planting arrived. Marcus went through motions mechanically. Work was familiar, comfortable, requiring no thought, which left too much room for everything else. Caroline suggested counseling. Marcus refused. "Talking won't change what happened." "It might help you accept it." "I don't want to accept it. I want to understand how I got it so wrong." One April morning, Marcus stood at the fence where he'd first seen Goliath. He remembered his reaction: genetic mistake, commercial failure, animal to be discarded. Right about appearance, wrong about everything that mattered. The irony was brutal. Marcus had spent his career finding value others overlooked: distressed equipment, undervalued land, operational efficiencies. He'd prided himself on seeing deeper than surface, and when it counted most, he'd failed completely. Montana State continued releasing research. Goliath's genetics studied across 3 countries, his immune markers revolutionizing disease resistance, his blood work changing veterinary science. Marcus had looked at him and seen only ugly bull fit for slaughter. He couldn't undo the sale, couldn't recover what he'd lost, couldn't change that catastrophic misjudgment. All he could do was carry the weight of knowing exactly how badly he'd failed his own standards, and live with the fact that Goliath had always been extraordinary. Marcus just hadn't bothered to look. Marcus didn't plan to attend the conference. Caroline insisted. "You can't avoid the world forever." "I'm not avoiding. I'm working." "You're punishing yourself." Maybe she was right. 12 months watching from distance as Goliath's story grew. International collaborations, vaccine developments, genetic therapies worth hundreds of millions, from the ugly bull he'd thrown away. The conference was at Montana State's campus. Marcus walked through halls displaying research posters, genetic charts, breeding innovations. Then he saw the sign, "Live Research Specimen Viewing." His feet moved before thinking. Through corridors, double doors, into climate-controlled facility where visitors observed animals behind glass. There was Goliath. The bull stood in spacious pen, healthy, well-fed. Patchy coat and asymmetrical face exactly as Marcus remembered, but something different. Goliath moved with calm confidence. Eyes alert, engaged. He looked like an animal understanding his own importance. Placard beside window. Research subject G274. Genetic breakthrough in bovine immunology. Estimated value, $89 million and growing. $89 million. The number had increased. Dr. Isabel Reyes appeared beside Marcus. "Mr. Hendricks, Didn't expect you here. Didn't expect to be here. Silence, watching Goliath investigate enrichment items. He's thriving, Isabel said. We've created protocols for his needs. He's irreplaceable. I know. Do you? Mr. Hendricks, you're known for finding value others miss, seeing potential in underappreciated assets. Not this time. No, not this time. Isabel paused. What did you see when you looked at him originally? Marcus didn't answer immediately. A mistake, something that didn't fit standards, an animal costing more than he'd generate. And now? Proof I was wrong about everything I thought I understood. Isabel studied him. The auction error wasn't your fault. The error put him in wrong section. I decided he was worthless first. Marcus's voice hollow. If I'd looked deeper, asked questions, done actual evaluation beyond visual judgment, but I didn't. Most people would have made same call. That doesn't make it less wrong. Goliath settled near window, massive body relaxed. Glanced at Marcus briefly, no recognition, then returned to routine. Why would he remember? Marcus had owned him 6 weeks, judged him deficient, shipped him away. Goliath's real life started after Marcus gave up. He's worth $89 million. I sold him for $2,000. You didn't know. I didn't bother to find out. Marcus turned away. That's worse. He left without looking back. Caroline found him in parking lot. You saw him? Yeah. He's extraordinary. Priceless. Everything I didn't see because I only looked at surface. Drive back was silent. Marcus stared at Montana landscape, thinking about the bull he'd discarded and fortune handed away through willful blindness. At the farm, he stood in empty pen where Goliath had briefly lived. Space felt inadequate for $89 million animal, but it had always been inadequate. Marcus just hadn't noticed. Dale found him at sunset. Saw Goliath today. How'd it go? He looked important. Marcus's laugh bitter. He looked like what he is, most valuable research animal in the country. I looked like what I am. Farmer too stupid to see it. Dale had no response. Marcus walked to house, leaving empty pen and ghost of his greatest mistake. Goliath would continue revolutionizing science. Montana State earning millions. Researchers publishing breakthroughs. Marcus would continue farming soybeans, carrying knowledge he'd held $89 million and thrown it away because it didn't look valuable. Worst part wasn't lost money. It was understanding value had always been there. Beneath surface he'd refused to look past. Some mistakes, born from our own blindness, can never be undone, only carried.